How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the horror house. I'm right here. Don't look at my nose. It's a weird angle. It's a very weird angle. I'm not sure if I like it, but it's the best angle I could get for this sculpting video. Today's video is going to be a little different. I'm going to be working on this piece, this little figurine that I've been sculpting on and off. This is like a big old monster dude, mouth wrapping around to the back, which is kind of cool. And then like an eyeball, and I gotta work on the hands, of course, try and get those done. I mean, there's no rush, of course, but I usually like to save the hands to last. I am using cost clay, of course. This stuff is great. It's very bendable when it's baked, and you don't have to worry about it shattering if you drop it. So it's pretty cool stuff. It is a bit gummy, but this video is not about that. This is a bit of a different video. I want to work on this dude and talk about a question that I often see in the art community when it comes to sculpting. And the question is, do you need to learn how to draw in order to sculpt? This question's been around since probably the beginning of art. Well, it's been around since, I first got started. And it was one of those questions that I actually fell victim to when I first started out. It is a question that I absolutely hate because the advice I see around it is just the worst thing. Of course, from my experience. And oftentimes you'll see, yes, you need to learn how to draw if you want to learn how to sculpt. And I'm here to tell you that's not the case. Damn, my nose is really big. That is not the case. I've been doing this a while. I don't have any drawing experience or anything like that. So I feel like I'm the type of person that might have a pretty good take on this. Why is this bad advice? There's many reasons as to why this is bad advice. And a lot of the times I see the same answer to this question. It's like, well, people say it'll teach you anatomy if you learn how to draw first. It'll give you help with correct observations, visual memory, light and shadow, composition, perspective, hand-eye coordination, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm sure it would. Sure, right? But all that stuff you can learn by yourself while learning to sculpt. Obviously, I mean, light and shadow. I mean, you just kind of move your finger around or different lights, different shadows, and see how it looks, right? I mean, that's not hard. Composition. Well, you have a 3D model in front of you that you can play with, right, for composition as well. Like, drawing itself is its own art medium. It makes no sense. Like, okay, well, you want to learn how to do a different medium. Well, you got to learn how to do this other medium first. It's never made sense at all. It's so dumb. If you're focusing on one medium, I mean, focusing on one medium is hard enough, right? Focusing on two, well, that's impossible. Because then you're going to be spending so much time focused on drawing when you could be spending that time focused on sculpting, getting good at this specific medium here. I don't know how I want these hands to look. I think I got to chunk them up a little bit. Yeah, I got to chunk them up a little bit, I think. So it's hard to juggle two art mediums, right? It takes a lot of time as well. So the time that you're putting into learning how to draw, you could be putting into learning how to sculpt. Also, don't be afraid to use any tools. I think I got these tools here, which are a dab set for, well, you know what dab sets are, right? When I first started sculpting, this question really drove me up the wall because I was seeing everybody saying, yes, you got to learn how to draw if you want to learn how to sculpt. And for the longest time, I put sculpting aside to try and teach myself, and take courses, of course, on how to draw. But I could never just grasp the process of drawing, right? I always found it easier, well, to work with my hands and physically, kind of have something to work on. My mind works better in a 3D space than a 2D space. I'll say that. And so for the longest time, I would learn how to draw boxes and circles and doing all the fundamentals for drawing when you know I kind of wish I didn't do that. I kind of wish I put that time into my sculpting back in the day. Then it would have saved me so much time. If you shouldn't learn how to draw first before sculpting, then what should you do? How do you get started by by doing all this stuff? Creature designing, characters, etc., etc. Right? Well, my advice to you would be to just dive right in. Get some clay, buy some clay. It doesn't have to be expensive clay. Go to the dollar store; they got clay there, and just dive in with it. Start dabbling around. There are so many tutorials on, well, not just YouTube, but on the web in general. So many tutorials, free tutorials, cheap courses on the web. Some courses you can check out are on like Stan Winston School. They have some really cool courses there. Domestica, I think it's Domestica. Yeah, Domestica. They got some great courses there as well, all centered around learning how to sculpt. Now remember, this also goes into digital sculpting, not just clay, right? But for those websites, I'll leave a couple links in the description if you guys want to check them out. If you're interested in learning how to sculpt, or maybe you're in the process of sculpting right now, and you just need a little bit of help, you check. I'll leave some information in the description. Also, check out some of my videos if you haven't already. If this is the first video you find on my channel, well, welcome on in. I'm Metal. I like to make creepy stuff out of clay and digital. So when you're first getting started, you want to be learning the basics of sculpting, right? Like armature building, how to make an armature. Now, it doesn't have to be crazy good or whatever. Different artists like to make armatures different ways. Like they like to measure everything out very intricately. Make sure like the proportions will be right. Other people just like to make a quick and dirty armature. I'm one of those people. I just like to twist wire together and there's my armature, right? It's I don't like to spend too much time on it, but like the basics of sculpting, like the armature making, definitely up there. Anatomy is huge, not just for human anatomy, but for animal as well. Especially if you want to get into character and creature designing, then you got to know your anatomy. It's just one of those things that you have to know. So if you go into this without really having that knowledge, then you're not going to understand the forms, what it takes to make characters. So I'd say that the top things would be anatomy for sure. Now you might be sitting there and asking like, well, how can I sculpt something if I can't draw it out? How do I create and come up with ideas for what I want to do? I struggled with this as well for a while. So if I can't draw, how do I do it? Well, folks, I am going to give you the secret to that. It's called sketching in clay. It's exactly how it sounds. So when you look at illustrators, comic book artists, you see pretty much the pipeline is to like sketch out something on paper, come up with quick and dirty ideas, concept, thumbnailing, stuff like that. And then once they get that idea of where they want to go, then they'll start to render it out, right? Well, you can do the exact same thing in clay as you would on paper, except you're just sketching with clay. Right? Like this dude, I didn't know what I was going to do with him. I built an armature and I just started fiddling around with proportions and shapes and kind of how I want the composition to look, and just working on the forms and building this creature up. I mean, I did the same thing with this chick. What's her name? Greta the Bog Witch. Yeah, this was an old sculpt actually. Usually I don't like to glue them down to the base. I like to kind of play with them like they're toys, kind of, so I can handle them better. But then once I find out how I want them to stand and the position I want them in, then usually I'll glue them into the base. But yeah, this chick, I just started sketching in clay, playing with shapes. So, I want her to have like this really gnarly like hand, right? Big hand that she can like swipe with if she's coming after you. And then her other hand is like split in two, carrying this giant like weird swamp club. And then she has like these weird little, um, what would you call these? Like little tendrils coming up with little spikes on it that can she can shoot acid out of, which is, I think is a pretty cool idea. So like a lot of the things I do, I sketch in clay. I don't draw it out. I don't even do a shitty little drawing at all. I just get get an armature. I'll show you an example of just a basic armature. So this right here is just a really basic armature that I usually make for myself. It's just stretching out wire, fold it in on itself, and then you twist it a couple times, and you snip the top so you can make arms, and then you got your legs. And that is it. Oh, then I wrap wire around it so the clay has something to stick to. Like that, right? That is basic and simple armature wire making right there. And, it gives me the option to, add the clay on there pretty quickly, and then I can, move the character around, move the arms up, try and figure out the pose. Do I want him, maybe, running, or, I don't know. Or, instead of a humanoid, you can always just flip it that way, and, we got, maybe a lion or some shit. But that's basically it, honestly, right? So it's kind of like you're playing with a toy, almost like an action figure, which is kind of cool. And this guy right here is the exact same thing. Simple armature, and, I just kind of build him up. And I stuck him into this, this block of clay just so I can hold him up. So, see? I can, if I want to, I can change the position of his legs, his arms. But I'm not going to do that right now because I like how he's just kind of leaning to one side, walking. And then, of course, I'm going to bake this dude. I should have baked this guy a while back because he's just all unbaked cost clay. And with polymer clay, you want to bake it in stages and build up the forms. But I didn't expect for this dude to really turn into anything. So that's my mistake. I'll just have to bake him longer and take my time. So when you're sculpting in clay, you kind of treat it like it's a piece of concept art, right? You're building up these shapes pretty quickly, just try and do something quick and dirty. Find something that you like. If you want to, you can make a bigger sculpture, or you can build off of that pre-existing one that you're working on and render it out that way. Another example, this dude here is a very, well, compared to this dude, very small kind of quick and dirty concept sketch I did, which I plan to turn into a much bigger sculpture, right? Just something I fleshed out overnight, just having fun with it. So I will be making an armature for this dude and then kind of rendering him into a bigger piece of art, which will be painted and all that, but this will be for later, of course. So it's basically the same thing as drawing when you're coming up with ideas. This was something I wish I was told back when I first started. And it took me so long to figure out just because my brain was just wrapped around that whole, you got to learn how to draw if you want to sculpt. Everybody was saying this. All the forums I was on, artists I talked to, it was just one of those questions. And there's just a consensus, and it was made up yep, no, you got to learn how to draw. You're not going to be a good artist. You're not going to be a good sculptor, digital sculptor, if you don't know how to draw. And my brain was just so wrapped around that idea. It kind of delayed my learning for doing all this. One of my favorite sculptors, Simon Lee, fantastic sculptor. He's a master. Let's just say that he's a master sculptor. His whole thing is, concepting in clay. People search him out just for him to make stuff up, to concept stuff up in clay, because he's always worked differently like that. And he tells people you don't need to learn how to draw if you want to sculpt, right? He doesn't. Just use clay. Clay sketching is the same thing as if you were to grab some piece of paper and start sketching out on it. And then once I heard that, it kind of all just clicked. Like, yes, that makes so much sense. Being able to just, sketch out ideas in clay. Like, why can't you do that? Why didn't I think about that for the longest time? Well, like I said, is because everyone was saying, no, you got to learn how to draw. So, to the people who say that, don't listen to them. I'm telling you right now, you do not need to learn how to draw if you want to be a good sculptor. And again, this goes for both traditional sculpting and digitally, if you like to use ZBrush or Blender or Nomad or whatever. This hand is also pre-baked. Just use like a heat gun. It's a lot easier to build up on top of this stuff instead of trying to build it all up in one go. Trying to make this a little bit sharper. Looking a little fat on the top there. But we can always build it up. You can also look at it this way. It's basically doodling in 3D. Right? You're doodling with clay or digital clay. It's honestly a lot of fun. And this is what I mainly do now. You know? This dude, this guy, the chick, Greta, all this Gizmo dude, the latex prop. Bigger sculpture for sure. But yeah, he was just sculpted in clay, concepted in clay, and then I made a latex copy of him. And pretty much all my artwork that I ever do is designing in clay, concepting in clay. You know, it's my favorite way to go about doing all this. It's just so much fun, and it's so addicting as well. This is looking all a little bit dirty and rough, but it's the point. We're having fun. We're playing with ideas. Do I want this dude just to have like regular, kind of bigger monster hands? Or do I want them to have like big nails? Or maybe the hands are just like giant claws. So I might play around with a couple ideas. And then I will determine what I want to do and what I think looks the best. So when it comes to hands like this, maybe I'll do like one finger, like, basic human shape. Maybe I'll do another finger where we can put like a big old nail on the end of it, right? Let's see. Maybe this is like the nail. Big old sharp nail. Or if your hands are fat like mine, it'll take you a second to do that. We have a nail there. I kind of like that. Kind of like the nail idea. Or we sharpen out one of the other fingers, like I was doing over here, or just like the tip of the finger comes into like a point, a claw or something. I like the nail. I think I'm going to go with like very sharp nails or something. I think that will look a lot better. So, do you need to know how to draw to begin sculpting? No, you don't. My advice, get some clay and just start learning the basics of sculpting. Just dive right in. If you got an idea, sketch it out in clay. Right? Try and build something up. Start learning your anatomy. That's a whole other topic. That's a whole other video. Learning anatomy and talking about that, because it is daunting, but it is not as daunting as you might think it is. Of course, when it comes to art, it's not a race. Art is a continuous journey. I mean, I wouldn't even say it's a journey. I would probably say it's like a lifestyle, because journeys usually have endings. So I'd say like art's more like a lifestyle. Especially if you want to get into this professionally, you are going to have to sacrifice some things, but it's totally worth it if you got that passion and drive to do it. So always be learning, always be practicing your craft. I believe you can do it. Just believe in yourself. And yes, I hope this video helped. If you're wondering about that question, do you need to learn how to draw? I hope I answered it for you, and I'm going to continue working on this one hand. Probably gonna go with the that nail route, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. And as always, I'll see you right there, in the next spooky art video.